Chapter 2. Last Wednesday night, the president had told us that we had nothing to fear, and he tried to end on an optimistic note. At least, that's what Wednesday's paper said. The beings who had sent the ball must be more advanced than we, and they must have many good things to give us. And we might be able to make beneficial contributions to them. Like what? I thought. Some photographs of the ball, taken from one of the manned orbiting laboratories, were on the second page. It looked like a giant black billiard ball. One TV comic had suggested that the other side might bear a big white 8. I may have thought that this was funny last Wednesday, but I didn't think so now. It seemed highly probable to me that the ball was connected to the 4 days' loss of memory. How? I had no idea. I turned on the 7:30 news channels, but they weren't much help except in telling us that the same thing had happened to everybody all over the world. Even those in the deepest diamond mines or submarines had been affected. The president was in conference, but he'd be making a statement over the network sometime today. Meanwhile, it was known that no radiation of any sort had been detected emanating from the ball. There was no evidence whatsoever that the object had caused the loss of memory. Or, as the jargon-crazy casters were already calling it, mem loss. I'm a lawyer, and I like to think logically, not only about what has happened, but what might happen. So I extrapolated on the basis of what little evidence or data there was. On the 1st of June, a Sunday, we woke up with all memory of May 31st back through May 28th completely gone. We had thought that yesterday was the 27th, and that this morning was that of the 28th. If the ball had caused this, why had it only taken 4 days of our memory? I didn't know. Nobody knew. But perhaps the ball, its devices, that is, were limited in scope. Perhaps they couldn't strip off more than 4 days of memory at a time from everybody on Earth. Postulate that this is the case. Then, what if the same thing happens tomorrow? We'll wake up tomorrow, June 2nd, with all memory of yesterday, June 1st, and 3 more days of May, the 27th through the 25th, gone. 8 days in one solid stretch. And what if this ghastly thing should occur the following day, June 3rd? We'll lose another 4 days. All memory of June 2nd will have disappeared. With it will go the memory of 3 more days from May 24th through the 22nd. 12 days in all from June 2nd backward. And the next day, June 3rd lost too, along with May 21st through May 19th. 16 days, a total blank. And the next day. And the next. No, it's too hideous and too fantastic to think about. While we were watching TV, Carol and the boys besieged me with questions. She was frantic. The boys seemed to be enjoying the mystery. They'd awakened expecting to go to school, and now they were having a holiday. To all their questions, I said, I don't know. Nobody knows. I wasn't going to frighten them with my extrapolations. Besides, I didn't believe them myself. You'd better call up your office and tell them you can't come in today, Carol said. Surely Judge Payne will call off the session today. Carol, it's Sunday, not Wednesday, remember? I said. She cried for a minute. After she'd wiped away the tears, she said, That's just it. I don't remember. My God, what's happening? The newscasters also reported that the White House was flooded with telegrams and phone calls demanding that rockets with H-bomb warheads be launched against the ball. The specials, which came on after the news, were devoted to the ball. These had various authorities, scientists, military men, ministers, and a few science fiction authors. None of them radiated confidence, but they were all temperate in their approach to the problem. I suppose they had picked for their level-headedness. The networks had screened out the hotheads and the crackpots. They didn't want to be generating any more hysteria. But Annell Robertson, a fundamentalist faith healer with a powerful radio TV station of his own, had already declared that the ball was a judgment of God on a sinful planet. It was the destroying angel. I knew that because Mrs. Douglas, no fanatic but certainly a zealot, had phoned me and told me to dial him in. Robertson had been speaking for an hour, she said, and he was going to talk all day. She sounded frightened, and yet, beneath the fear, was a note of joy. Obviously, she didn't think that she was going to be among the goats when the last days arrived. She'd be right in there with the whitest of the sheep. My curiosity finally overcame my repugnance for Robertson. I dialed the correct number but got nothing except a pattern. Later today, I found out his station had been shut down for some infraction of FCC regulations. At least, that was the explanation given on the news. But I suspected that the government regarded him as a hysteria-monger. At 11, Carol reminded me that it was Sunday and that, if we didn't hurry, we'd miss church. The Forest Hill Presbyterian has a good attendance, but its huge parking lot has always been adequate. This morning, we had to park 2 blocks up the street and walk to church. Every seat was filled. We had to stand in the anteroom near the front door. The crowd stank of fear. Their faces were pale and set, their eyes big. The air conditioning labored unsuccessfully to carry away the heat and humidity of the packed and sweating bodies. The choir was loud, but quavering. Their Rock of Ages was crumbling. Dr. Boynton would have prepared his sermon on Saturday afternoon, as he always did. But today, he spoke impromptu. Perhaps, he said, this loss of memory had been caused by the ball. Perhaps there were living beings in it who had taken 4 days away from us, not as a hostile move, but merely to demonstrate their immense powers. There was no reason to anticipate that we would suffer another loss of memory. These beings merely wanted to show us that we were hopelessly inferior in science, and that we could not launch a successful attack against them. What the hell's he doing? I thought. Is he trying to scare us to death? Boynton hastened then to say that beings with such powers of such obvious advancement would not, could not, be hostile. They would be on too high an ethical plane for such evil things as war, unless they were attacked, of course. They would regard us as beings who had not yet progressed to their level, but had the potentiality, the God-given potentiality, to be raised to a high level. He was sure that, when they made contact with us, they would tell us that all was for the best. They would tell us that we must, like it or not, become true Christians. At least, we must all, Buddhists, Muslims, and so forth, become Christian in spirit, whatever our religion or lack thereof. They would teach us how to live as brothers and sisters, how to be happy, how to truly love. Assuredly, God had sent the ball, since nothing happened without his knowledge and consent. He had sent these beings, whoever they were, not as destroying angels, but as sharers of peace, love, and prosperity. That last, with the big P, seemed to settle down most of the congregation. Boynton had not forgotten that most of his flock were of the big business and professional classes. Nor had he forgotten that inscribed on the arch above the church entrance was, "They shall prosper who love thee."